What is going on, boys? Welcome back to another video. Today we're breaking down the must-add players that could be sitting on your waiver wire right now. A lot of these guys are great long-term holds, and I'm going to be giving you guys my takes on all of these players. So without further ado, let's dive right into it. We're not diving into it just yet because I just want to say, boys, hit the subscribe button, okay? If I look at my analytics, it says in the last 28 days, 71% of the people that watch my videos are not subscribed. Come on, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button too while you're at it. And also follow my Twitter. I've been posting bangers on there. I'm very active on Twitter. I post a lot of good information and also some funny stuff. So make sure you follow me on Twitter at FIREDUP. But yeah, boys, let's get into it. First off, boys, I just want to quickly touch on some players that I talked about in my last must-add video. A lot of these guys are still must-add players, so if they are somehow available, you should definitely take a look at them. Moving on, boys, I just want to highlight 7 players that have their roster percentages way too low. These guys were in my previous slide and obviously in my last must-add video, so I'm not going to dedicate a full section to talking about these guys. But Cam Atkinson, Sean Couturier, Ryan Johansson, Nick Schmaltz, Zach Werenski, Arturi Lehkonen, and Mike Matheson. I just feel like these guys should have a higher roster percentage, so make sure if they are sitting on your waiver wire, you take a look at them. Next up, I want to talk about some players that are sell highs. You could argue that they should be on this list, but in my opinion, I think they are going to cool off, mainly because of their deployment. So if you added them, you could try to package them in a deal for a better player. Then finally, boys, I want to talk about some bounce back ads. These guys you don't have to add immediately, but a lot of them have been dropped depending on your league size, so maybe take a look at them. Filip Gustafsson, Nico Hischier, Jordan Kyrou, Johnny Gaudreau, Vincent Trocheck, Trevor Zegras, Pavel Buchnevich, Matty Beniers, Jake DeBrusk, Ricard Raquel, Robert Thomas, and Barry Hayden. Most of these guys are 60-point players, so there's no way that they sustain such low production. They are so due, guys. If you want to get ahead of the curve and add them for their bounce back, you could reap the rewards in the next couple of weeks. So make sure you keep an eye out for these players. Also, just a bonus for you boys. I talked about this player in my buy low video. He wasn't an official buy low player, but after I recorded the video, I realized he should have been on this list, so I included him in a section in that video. But MIRO HEISKANEN is a great buy low target right now. He is on the first line power play, getting a ton of minutes on this great Dallas Stars team. So if you can make a deal for MIRO HEISKANEN, I suggest you do it. He is going to start popping off soon, so this is the perfect time to do it, guys. Buy low on MIRO HEISKANEN. The first player I want to talk about is Cole Perfetti of the Winnipeg Jets. At first, to start the season, he was not getting great deployment whatsoever. He was getting like 10, 11, 12-minute games. It was very disappointing to see because last season, he had 30 points in 51 games. He had a great rookie year. But the reason he's on this list, guys, is because he got moved up to the top 6, and he's now on the first line power play over Nikolai Ehlers. So they bumped Ehlers down to the second unit. Now Perfetti's on there. You could see him have a decent amount of good weeks while Velarde's out. So this is a great short-term ad. This is more of a deeper league ad. I would say, 14 teams or more, 16 teams or more, but Cole Perfetti is a great short-term ad right now. Next up, I want to talk about Connor Ingram of the Arizona Coyotes. And the first thing I want to say is that this is a deeper league ad. His save percentage isn't going to be great. His goals against average isn't going to be great being on the Coyotes. However, right now they're splitting starts between Karel Vejmelka and Connor Ingram. So Ingram could potentially get 41 starts this year. Arizona is a better team than last season as well, so he does have value. It is going to be in a deeper league, but still, guys, if you were in need of a goalie in a deeper league, I suggest you take a look at him. Next up, we got to talk about Philadelphia Flyers rookie Bobby Brink. He's on the first line power play right now and has been on the first line power play for the majority of the season. Yes, he's playing on the bumper, so he's getting the least amount of touches on the power play, but still, guys, being on the first line power play has a lot of value. The Flyers don't have the best power play, but this means that Bobby Brink has value going forward. They could mix up these lines, right? It's still early on in the season. Personally, I think Owen Tippett should be on the first line power play, but what do I know? I'm not the genius that John Tortorella is. So yeah, we'll see how that changes. But for now, guys, if you're in a league with 14 teams or more, I suggest taking a look at a guy like Bobby Brink. Next up, we have Luke Evangelista of the Nashville Predators, and this guy could actually be a good long-term ad. Let me tell you why, guys. The first reason is that right now, he's playing on the first line power play. Yes, this is because Cody Glass is injured, but I could see Evangelista competing to be on that first unit. I think this power play could switch up quite a bit because they're running 2 defensemen on there, Tyson Barrie and Roman Josi. That could easily change. They can bump Barrie down to the second unit. They've been experimenting with lines, so If Evangelista can become a staple on that first unit, he definitely has a lot of value. Right now, he only has 5 points in 9 games, but all of these 5 points have come from the last 5 games. So he's heating up. He's getting more ice time, better deployment. We'll see how this changes when Cody Glass returns, but he is a guy that has a lot of promise. Last year, he had 15 points in 24 games. Very small sample size, but he's a young player that could break out and get better throughout the season. He's only 21 years old, so definitely take a look at him. You don't have to add him just yet, but definitely keep your eye on him. Next up, we have Quinton Byfield of the Los Angeles Kings, and this guy has looked so good this season. I've watched a couple of Kings games, and it seems like he's getting better every single game that I watch. Now, I do want to say that his ceiling is capped, right? He's not on the first line power play. He's only getting 15 minutes of ice time per game. It's not the greatest, but he's still playing on that top line, and he is a 21-year-old who's a former 2nd overall pick, so he has a lot of potential. Right now, he has 6 points in 9 games. It's a +5. He's playing great hockey, guys. He's a guy that I think could put up 50 to 55 points. His ceiling's capped because of that lack of power play time, but playing on the first line with Anze Kopitar and Adrian Kempe has a lot of value in this great Kings offense. So if you're in a deeper league, I suggest you add this guy. Next up, we have Filip Chytil of the New York Rangers, and this guy is definitely an add in a deeper league. I would say 14 teams or more. He has the potential in leagues with less teams than that, but the issue is that he's not on the first line power play, so his ceiling is capped. What I do want to say about Filip Chytil is that last season, despite averaging 14 minutes and 41 seconds of ice time per game, he had 22 goals and 45 points in 74 games. This was obviously fantastic considering his deployment on the second line power play and the third line, but this season his deployment has improved. He's not on the first line power play. However, he's been moved up to the top 6, and he's playing on a line with Artemi Panarin, who has been on absolute fire. Also, if you're looking at his ice time totals, he's averaging 16 minutes and 32 seconds of ice time per game. It's 2 minutes more than last season, so there's a chance Filip Chytil puts up 60 points this year. Most of these points coming from even strength, but he's a very talented player, guys. I think you should add him. Right now, he has 6 points in 9 games. No goals, but I promise you guys, those goals are going to come. He could be rostered in a more shallow league, but for now, in any leagues with 14 teams or more, you should add him. Next up, we got to talk about Seattle Kraken goaltender Joey Daccord. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. With Daccord, we basically saw him get 3 starts in a row on a road trip for the Kraken, which was very surprising to see. And he's played really good so far, so you could see a split moving forward between him and Grubauer. What I will say is that I think a split between him and Grubauer is probably the ceiling. I don't know if he can become the #1 starter because the Kraken are paying Grubauer so much money. Grubauer hasn't played terrible, he just hasn't been that good. So unless Daccord immensely outplays Grubauer, then you're probably not going to see anything better than a split. If you're in a really tough goalie situation, then maybe you should take a look at this guy. If you have Grubauer, then maybe you want to add him as insurance. But in general, guys, his stock has gone up quite a bit. Definitely a deeper league ad, but very happy with what I'm seeing so far for him. Next up, we got to talk about Wyatt Johnston of the Dallas Stars. He has been great so far, guys. He has 7 points in 8 games, 3 goals. And he was great last year as a rookie. If you're looking at his stats here, he had 24 goals and 41 points in 82 games, despite only averaging 15 minutes and 28 seconds of ice time per game. Putting up 24 goals as a rookie is pretty darn good, and we've seen his deployment get better this season, right? Last year, like I said, 15 minutes and 28 seconds of ice time per game. This season, it's 17 minutes and 4 seconds of ice time per game, so almost 2 minutes more of ice time. That is going to mean more production. Yes, he's not on the first line power play. I don't think he is going to get on there, but I do think next season is a year where he could blow up and really put up some great numbers. Either way, guys, this season I could see him putting up 25 goals, 50 plus points, so he has value in fantasy. I think he has a pretty safe floor with this deployment, and there is potential, especially later on in the season, where he could truly break out. We'll see what happens, guys, but I definitely like adding Wyatt Johnston right now. Next up, I got to talk about rookie Adam Fantilli of the Columbus Blue Jackets. If you guys don't know him, he was drafted 2nd overall in this year's NHL entry draft behind this guy named Connor Bedard. And what I want to say about Fantilli is that he has massive potential. The reason I think he has so much potential is his deployment. He's averaging 16 minutes and 22 seconds of ice time per game. That is very solid. And his production is decent so far. 5 points in 9 games, 2 of these points being goals. He's starting to heat up, guys. And I think he's going to get better as the season goes on because he's a rookie. You are going to see him get more comfortable in the NHL. And that means you could really see him break out in the second half of the season. The last thing I want to talk about with Fantilli is power play time, which is very important. If you're not not on the first unit, your ceiling is going to be capped. However, right now he's on the first line power play with the absence of Patrik Laine. He's in concussion protocol. I don't even know if it's protocol anymore. I think he generally is having concussion symptoms, so he might be out for a couple of weeks. Either way, guys, when Patrik Laine comes back, I think there's a chance that Fantilli can find himself on the first unit permanently. If that happens, the upside is to the moon. And the reason he could be on the first line power play is because they have Boone Jenner, Johnny Gaudreau, Zach Werenski, Patrik Laine, and then one other spot left. Originally, they were running Kirill Marchenko on there, and I still think Marchenko has a lot of potential, but Marchenko has not looked good at all. So if Fantilli can fight to be on that first unit, so much upside, like I said. Add this guy before it's too late because I do think he is going to break out. He's more of a speculative add. I really like his deployment. I really like his situation, and I'm going to be adding him in a couple of my leagues. Next is Kaiden Guhle of the Montreal Canadiens. I think 9% roster on Yahoo is far too low because this guy's been playing incredible as of late. He's only played 5 games, but he has 3 assists in those 5 games, and he's a +8. Guhle's only 21 years old. He's a young player, drafted in the first round in 2020, so I definitely think he has the potential to break out, but there are going to be some bumps in the road. There's a chance that he doesn't play a full season. You know, he could get scratched. We'll see how it all plays out, guys, but the reason why he's a must-add player in general is because his peripherals. He takes so many shots. He puts up so many hits and blocks. So if your league values shots, hits, and blocks, take a look at this guy, especially if you need a defenseman. In a points league that doesn't heavily value shots, hits, and blocks, Guhle's not going to have a lot of value. But like I said, in those other type of points leagues, in those category leagues, he is going to be decent. So take a look at him. Next up, we have Filip Hronek of the Vancouver Canucks, and I understand that his roster percentage has gone way up as of late. However, if you are in need of a defenseman, I suggest you take a look at this guy. He should be rostered in any leagues with 12 teams or more. Right now, he has 8 points in 9 games. He's a +8. And even though his ceiling is capped because he's not on that first line power play, he's still getting almost 25 minutes of ice time per game. So that is great for fantasy. He's playing on the first pairing with Quinn Hughes, who looks absolutely incredible. This means that Hronek is going to have value this season. So like I said, if you need a defenseman, take a look at this guy. Next up, we got to talk about Lucas Raymond of the Detroit Red Wings. And listen, guys, I'll say right off the bat that he's not on the first line power play, which really caps his ceiling. Last year, he had 45 points in 74 games, and 19 of these points were on the power play. So you're going to need him to be on the first line power play if you really want to see him truly break out. However, I think he's still a must-add player for a number of reasons. The first reason is that he's on the first line with Alex DeBrincat and Dylan Larkin. Last year, it was Larkin, Bertuzzi, and Lucas Raymond, and I really do think that DeBrincat is a huge upgrade over Bertuzzi. That is going to help Raymond. The second reason is that Raymond is only 21 years old. He was a top 5 pick in the 2020 NHL entry draft, so he has a lot of potential to break out. He's certainly a breakout candidate. We can't predict the future, but there is a chance he could break out maybe in the second half of the season. Who knows, guys? The upside is there. And then the last reason is that David Perron, who has been on the first line power play over Raymond, has not been producing. He's struggling. He's 35 years old, guys. I really do think that there's a chance that they put Raymond back on this first line power play, especially because Raymond is on the first line, even strength, with DeBrincat and Larkin. So he's building chemistry with those guys. I could see that happening, and if you want to get ahead of the curve before that happens and add Raymond, I suggest you do. Next up, we got to talk about Reilly Smith of the Pittsburgh Penguins. He has 4 goals and a total of 7 points in 9 games, which is pretty solid. I mean, his shooting percentage is a little bit high, so I do expect his goal production to cool off. But the reason he's on this list is because he's currently getting looks on the first line power play. We know that Brian Rust used to be a staple on the first line power play. However, we saw last season Rickard Rakell come over from the Ducks and take over that spot, so this could be another situation where a player from another team comes to the Penguins and gets on the first line power play. Again, guys, it's very early. They're trying to experiment and get this power play going, so there's a good chance that Smith gets taken off of it. However, if you want to make a speculative ad and add Smith, maybe it's a good short-term ad. It could be a good long-term ad. We will see what happens, guys. He's still playing in the top 6 on the pen, so he has value, but that power play time on the first unit is what is going to be key for him being worth holding on to long term. Next up, we got to talk about Owen Tippett of the Philadelphia Flyers. And listen, guys, I'll say right off the bat that he's not on the first line power play. This is very disappointing, and I think it caps his ceiling completely. However, I think there's a chance that Tippett can get back on this power play sometime throughout the season, so keep an eye out for that. Either way, I think he still has value in fantasy because he's playing on the first line with Sean Couturier and Cam Atkinson, even strength, and he's a guy that takes a lot of shots and puts up a lot of hits. So cross your fingers he can get back on the first line power play, because if he does, I think he's going to put up some monster numbers, but we'll just have to wait and see what happens. Next up, we got to talk about Dylan Strome of the Washington Capitals, an absolute must-add player. To start the season, they didn't have him on the first line power play, which made absolutely no sense. However, they put him back on this first unit, and he is playing incredible. Strome has 6 points in 8 games, all of these points being goals. And these 6 goals have come in the last 5 games. So he is on an absolute heater. What I will say is that his shooting percentage is 35.3%. So it is going to cool down. This goal production is not sustainable whatsoever. Regardless of the unsustainable goal production, what I'm really excited about with Dylan Strome is his deployment. Like I said, he's on the first line power play now, but he's also on the first line with Alexander Ovechkin and Tom Wilson. And he's getting more ice time than he did last year. Last year, he averaged 16 minutes and 41 seconds of ice time per game. This year, it's 17 minutes and 56 seconds. So very promising stuff. Last year, he had 23 goals and 65 points in 81 games. So with more ice time, you could actually see him get more points than this. You could actually see Dylan Strome put up 70 points this year. We also just learned today that Nicholas Backstrom is taking a leave from the team due to injury. So this opens the door for even more ice time for Strome. We will see what happens, guys, but in general, he should be rostered in 12-team leagues or more, or maybe even less. Maybe a league with 10 teams he should be rostered. I really do think that he has potential with this deployment. The next must-add player is Kyle Palmieri of the New York Islanders. This guy has been great so far if you're looking at his production. He has 7 points in 8 games, 3 of these points being goals. And the main reason that he's a must-add player is his deployment. He's averaging 18 minutes and 2 seconds of ice time per game. That is very solid. And he's also on the first line power play now. There's always a chance they put Anders Lee back on the first line power play, but I don't think that's going to be the case. Palmieri has been pretty good on this power play. He has 3 power play points in 8 games. We'll see how it all plays out, guys, but I'm really excited about this deployment. And Palmieri is a guy that puts up great peripherals. He's an over a hit per game player. He takes a decent amount of shots. So if he manages to stay on this first line power play, he will have a lot of value. The next must-add player is Sean Monahan of the Montreal Canadiens. Yes, I do think he's a little bit of a sell high candidate. I talked about him in my most recent sell high video. The reason for this is because his shooting percentage is pretty inflated right now, 22.7%. Regardless, guys, his production has been really good so far. 5 goals and a total of 8 points in 9 games. And what's interesting as well is that last season with the Canadiens, he played 25 games and had 17 points. So this isn't something new. He's been producing on the Canadiens. What I'm loving about Monahan is that even though he's on the third line, his deployment is great. He's getting 19 minutes of ice time per game. That's the highest since the 2018 season, in which he put up 82 points. I'm not saying he's going to get there, but I do think he could be in for a very good season. He's on the first line power play as well, playing alongside emerging superstar Cole Caulfield. So I'm really thinking Monahan could have like a 60-point season. Apparently, he gets a lot of face-off wins too for you guys in category leagues. So take a look at a guy like Sean Monahan. I think right now in any leagues with 12 teams or more, he needs to be rostered. The next must-add player is Teuvo Teravainen of the Carolina Hurricanes. Yes, he's a little bit of a sell-high candidate. His shooting percentage is way too high at 36.4%. However, I do think there is some good long-term potential, so let's break it down. Obviously, right now, his production has been incredible. 8 goals and a total of 9 points in 10 games. His goal production is going to come down, like I said, but the reason I'm really liking Teuvo right now is because he's on the first line power play. Yes, Svechnikov just came back, but I do think there's a chance that Teuvo can stay on that first line power play for the rest of the year, which means he's going to have a decent amount of value. We know that he has talent because 2 years ago on the Hurricanes, he put up 65 points in 77 games, and 31 of these points were from the power play. So he used to be a power play specialist. With Svechnikov coming back, they're going to have to bump one person down to the second unit, and that's either going to be Teravainen, Jarvis, or Necas. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what's going to happen, but if Teravainen stays in the first line power play, you could see him put up similar numbers to the 2021-2022 season. He's in a contract year as well, guys. I don't want to put too much stock into that, but that is something to consider. We will see what happens, guys. But for now, I would say Adam. You don't have to hold on to him forever, but you can see if he keeps his production up. You can see if he stays in the first line power play, and then you can figure out what you want to do with him from there. The next player I want to talk about is Pavel Mintyukov of the Anaheim Ducks. I may be butchering that pronunciation. You guys let me know in the comments, but this guy has been absolutely incredible so far. He has 7 points in 10 games on this Ducks team as a rookie, And yeah, I've been super impressed. Mintyukov has benefited from Jamie Drysdale being out with an injury. However, I think the way that he has played has earned him a role on this team. He's currently playing on the first line power play. And if he continues to play like this, I expect him to stay on this first line power play. Another thing to consider is that he puts up monster hits and blocks. So if you're in a category league or a points league that values those, he definitely has an edge against his competition. I will say that this guy's a rookie. He's 19 years old, so there could be some bumps along the road. But regardless, guys, I think there's a lot of potential for him this season, and you need to add him. Next up, we got to talk about Pavel Zacha, and this guy is a must-add player. He has 6 points in 9 games, but 5 of these 6 points have come in the last 4 games, so he's really heating up. The reason why I'm such a big fan of Zacha is his deployment is top-notch. He's averaging almost 19 minutes of ice time per game. He's on the first line with David Pastrnak. He's on the first line power play with David Pastrnak, so he is going to rack up a ton of points this season. Last year, despite not being on the first line power play and only averaging 16 minutes of ice time per game, he still put up 21 goals on a total of 57 points in 82 games. I also should mention that only 8 of these 57 points last year came from the man advantage. So being on this first line power play now, getting 3 more minutes of ice time per game this season than last year, I think there's a chance he puts up 70 points this season. And we will see what happens, guys, but there's no doubt in my mind that Zacha is going to have a great year with this deployment. He also puts up a decent amount of hits as well, so if your league values those, that's another bonus. Make sure you add this guy before it's too late. Next up, we got to talk about Mason McTavish of the Anaheim Ducks. A lot of Ducks players have seen their stock go way up in the last week because they've had some monster games. A lot of them are sell highs in my opinion, but I think Mason McTavish is a hold. First off, I just want to talk about his production. He has 5 goals and a total of 12 points in 10 games. Yes, this production is going to cool off. His shooting percentage is 19.2%, which is not sustainable, and the shooting percentage of his teammates is also not sustainable as well. So he's not going to be an over point per game player. Either way, guys, the reason why I think is a long-term hold is because this guy is a superstar in the making. This guy's only 20 years old. He was drafted 3rd overall in the 2021 NHL entry draft. And when I watched him at the World Juniors in 2022, I knew this guy was going to be special. So I think that he is a prime breakout candidate. I don't think he is going to eclipse 70 points this season. I think he is going to have around 60 to 65 points, but that's still a breakout considering last year he only had 43 points. We will see what happens in terms of how the Ducks are going to perform, right? Because obviously they're on a very big high right now. But what I like about McTavish is his deployment, not so much the power play side, but he's getting 17 minutes and 25 seconds of ice time per game. It's 2 minutes more than last year. I want to see him get more power play time because right now he's on the 2nd unit. They kind of run 2 units, but the first unit is kind of like a 1A unit, and then the second unit's a 1B unit. So I like to see him get on that 1A unit. I don't know if that's going to happen, but that definitely caps the ceiling a little bit. He's probably been added in your league already, but if he's somehow not and he's sitting on your waiver wire, then go add this guy immediately. He's going to cool down, like I said, but he could be a guy that you could sell high on, or he could be a guy that you just ride out this hot streak with. So yeah, take a look at him. Even in a league with 8 teams, I think you should add him just because he's playing so good. And I think he does have a decent amount of potential for the rest of the year. Next up is rookie goaltender Lukas Dostal of the Anaheim Ducks. And the reason that this guy's on this list is because John Gibson just went down with an injury. We don't know the severity of the injury, but if it's long-term, then Dostal's value goes way up. Now, prior to this injury, Dostal and Gibson were splitting starts. So even if Gibson's injury is short-term, Dostal will still have value in fantasy. However, this is going to be in a much deeper league because a goalie splitting on the Ducks is not going to be worth a lot. However, like I said, if this Gibson injury is long-term, then you need to make adding Dostal a priority. In a category league, Dostal is not the best option. His goals against average and his save percentage are not that great. However, in a points league that values volume and saves, Dostal could have a lot of value if this Gibson injury is long-term. So if you need a goalie, you need to add this guy ASAP. We don't have the details on Gibson's injury, like I said, but it's worth taking the risk and adding him just in case we get confirmation that Gibson's injury is long-term. If it's a short-term injury, you could probably just drop him, but definitely add him just on speculation alone. Next up, I got to talk about Stuart Skinner of the Edmonton Oilers. I personally think that Skinner is a better goalie than Jack Campbell. We saw that last season, and I think history is going to repeat itself. We are going to see Skinner become the #1 starter again. The Oilers are going to bounce back, and I think a lot of people drop Stuart Skinner. So if you are in need of a goalie, you should add Stuart Skinner, guys. I think he could be available in a decent amount of leagues. and the upside is there. We have to remember that the Oilers are still a playoff team. They are going to get back to winning games, and I think for the Oilers to get these goalies going, they are going to have to run with them. They are going to have to give them multiple starts in a row. It looks like they're starting to do that with Stuart Skinner. He's been playing a little bit better, so I think Skinner is going to steal the net. Again, I don't have a crystal ball, so I can't predict what is going to happen, but in my opinion, Jack Campbell has been a career backup, and Skinner is a young goalie who seemed to be very capable last season, so I think Skinner will end up starting majority of the games for the Oilers this year, and a lot of people are going to regret dropping him. The number one must-add player is goaltender Cam Talbot of the Los Angeles Kings. And the reason he's a must-add player is because in the last couple of games, he's been stealing starts from Phoenix Copley, and he's been outperforming him. My issue with Phoenix Copley is that he's been a career backup, and the Kings clearly do not trust in him to be their number one goalie. Last year, they traded for Joonas Korpisalo at the trade deadline, despite Copley playing really well, so that just showed me that they are not going to want to roll with him long term. They signed Cam Talbot in the offseason, and so far he has outperformed Phoenix Copley. Copley has only started 3 games this year, and in one of those games he got pulled, so not the greatest stuff from him. Talbot just got 2 games in a row, including a very good win against the Toronto Maple Leafs, so I think there's a very good chance that he starts a majority of the games. It's not going to be more than 50 games because I do think that with his age, that's not going to be good for managing his workload, but I can see Talbot getting 45 to 50 starts this season. The fact that he's on a very good team, a playoff team like the Canes, means that he is going to have a lot of value, so if you need a goalie, you need to add this guy immediately. All right, quickly, boys, I just want to add this in. We just learned this morning that Carter Hart is going to miss significant time. We don't know the timeline. It could be 4 to 6 weeks or maybe even more, so do yourself a favor and add Samuel Ersson. That's the backup on the Flyers. If you need a goalie, you need to add this guy, or if you have Carter Hart, then you need to add this guy as well. I also want to tell you guys to add Troy Terry if he's available. He's been really good in the last 2 years, and he started off slow, but he's finally producing, so he's definitely a good player to add. All right, boys, that's the end of the video. Hit that like button if you enjoyed it. Hit the subscribe button if you're new to the channel, and I will catch you in the next one.